Because Trump is posing the gravest challenge our country has faced since the Second World War.
Canada faces one of the most serious crises in our history. We can't change Donald Trump.
Trump represents the biggest threat our country has seen since the Second World War. All economic plans today have to start with an effective response to President Trump. He is the biggest economic menace our country and Canadians are facing. The critical moment our country is facing to the existential threat that President Trump poses to our economy, to our sovereignty. And the critical thing for us to all remember is the real threat to Canadian families, the real threat to people working really hard and struggling to get by is not anyone on this stage. It is Pierre Poilievre. He will cut. He will bring in a cruel austerity that will hurt all the people in Canada who need the help the most. And that's why I'm proud to be a Liberal, and that's why I'm running to be the next leader of our party.
The Americans depend on us. And you can't bring a calculator to a knife fight.
Since they're Liberals, we know they won't be bringing firearms. So what will they do?
Canada, by contrast, is going to be smart. We are going to have a targeted retaliation that exerts maximum pain in the U.S. and does minimum harm to us. We're going to hit Trump's best friends. I will impose a 100% tariff on Teslas. I'm going to hit Wisconsin dairy. I'm going to hit Florida orange juice. And you are going to see a stock market reaction.
Sales of Teslas in Canada were down in 2024, and they're probably lucky to have sold 30,000 units. They sold because of 0% financing, buyer referral bonuses, and government rebates. Wisconsin dairy exports to Canada in 2024 equaled 1.14 billion US. Imports were lower in 2024 also. Florida orange juice imports to Canada in 2024 measures in the tens of millions of US dollars, with 60% of Florida orange juice going to Canada, which is also down in 2024. As for oranges themselves, most oranges in Canada come from somewhere else. So it really is personal. She's hitting Trump's friends. As for the stock market reaction she's hoping for, look at Brown-Forman liquor distributors after Canada pulled U.S. booze from the shelves. Despite this, their stock rose 8%, as Canada is only 1% of sales.
And I'm going to call on Canadians to stop going to Florida, to stop buying Florida orange juice, because that's a $50 billion economy in that state alone. Canadians matter to the United States.
But what she's not saying is that Canada does not constitute the entirety of a $50 billion tourism and orange juice market.
It's an emergency situation, and we got to relook at our defense spending, where we're buying planes from the United States. We're buying all kinds of defense industry products from the United States. And you know what? We're going to put them on hold for now, and if this continues for a couple more weeks, we're going to cancel them. We start this process, other people follow us, it will hit them exactly where it hurts.
You tell them, big guy, that small Canadian defense budget is going to really cripple the U.S. defense industry.
Because I know that we have needed to keep our fiscal firepower dry, because I saw that Trump was coming.
You saw all of this coming. Then why didn't you do something to get ready for it? You were the finance minister, after all.
We can get a good deal that actually we can successfully negotiate with President Trump is because we are an energy superpower.
Hey, here's an idea. Instead of all that other stuff, why don't you just pull out your superpower right from the start instead? That is, if you really do want to make a deal with a guy who's all about making deals. Something tells me you really don't want to make a deal here.
We are a proud, sovereign country. And as Canadians, we have so much to offer.
We can't change Donald Trump, but we can control our economic destiny. We are masters in our own home.
We saw President Trump abandon the free world.
For the first time since the Second World War, rather than guaranteeing the rules-based order, the U.S. is turning predator.
It's our own intelligence agency that can work to collect foreign intelligence. Now might be the time that we need to establish those capabilities. We heard earlier today that the Americans had thought about removing Canada from our Five Eye partnership. We rely too much on the Americans for intelligence internationally, and we need to ensure that Canada has the capacity and the capability to protect ourselves, to work with democratic partners.
And I propose something called CARD, which is the Canadian Agency for Advanced Research in Defense. And this is taking something that the Americans do, and they have their program called DARPA. So I'm copying that program.
Throughout this process, we absolutely need to shore up our allies with democracies around the world because our democracy is under threat. The way that we're going to bring young people back to the party is not by being conservative light and not by being unambitious for Canada. It's going to be by having bold ideas for this country where Canadians feel inspired and hopeful about the future that we're going to have.
Liberals always campaign on hope and change you can believe in. Guess that's all they've got.
I will fight for Canada, and together we will win. Trump is unleashed and empowered. As your Prime Minister, I will be too.
We need to ensure that the government can be there for Canadians like the federal government was during the pandemic with the Canada Emergency Response Benefit, the business loan, as well as the wage subsidy, because we will win against Donald Trump. But we need to ensure that Canadians have the income support they need and the jobs to get to when we eventually win.
Maybe this is what the Liberals really are afraid of.
What country are you attacking?
Oh, Canada.
We're not at war with Canada. Wait, are we?
Recognizing foreign credentials of people who are already here. You know, that famous person we all know who is driving a taxi but is a nurse or a doctor, that's another example.
Expeditiously can recognize foreign-trained doctors and healthcare professionals.
Make it easier for foreign health professionals to work more rapidly.
By recognizing foreign credentials.
I don't know about you, but somehow I have a hard time believing that any of these politicians are currently without a medical doctor or expert care, and that any of them would willingly subject themselves to the expertise, examination, or scalpel of anyone they have just described.
I've put forward a plan to modernize our social safety net and put us on a path towards a basic income.
Have been lacking for so long in social housing. The government's got out of social housing, and there's a knock-on effect that infects everybody when that happens. So we need to get back into social housing.
Bold, ambitious plan on housing that would eliminate homelessness. But let's be clear, poverty costs us money, and investing to tackle and end poverty, like things like the Canada Child Benefit or increasing senior supports, is going to benefit all of us.
Canadians live 4 years longer than Americans, and median wealth in Canada is higher than in the US. As Liberals, we have to remember the great legacy of Jean Chrétien and Paul Martin. We are the party that believes in social policy and economic policy.
But in all seriousness, what Liberals everywhere really are afraid of is the defense of true liberty stamping out their unattainable utopian ideas.
Are you scared?
Tell me, Buffy, what place is there for fear in a struggle whose ultimate goal is nothing less than the survival of liberty?
We will need to build a strong economy, and that requires big changes.
The Americans depend on us.
To move this country forward from where we are today, which has become quite a weak position economically.
We are a strong, resilient country. Trump is giving us an opportunity to make a strong economy even stronger and more resilient.
We are facing potentially one of the greatest economic shocks our country has experienced.
I want to be clear about the, quote, strength of our economy. Our economy over the last 5 years has been driven by a big increase in the labor force, which was largely because of a surge in immigration that is now trying to be controlled, and by government spending that grew over 9% year after year after year, twice the rate of growth of our economy. Okay, so our economy was weak before we got to the point of these threats from President Trump.
I announced a plan to create 1 million new entrepreneurs in this country.
Pardon me, but entrepreneurs are people who have great ideas and find ways to make them a reality. So are you going to put ideas into people's heads? Of course not. Instead, you'll fund the ideas you like and not fund the ideas you don't like. This is government setting up a framework whereby it can pick the winners and the losers, and that is wrong.
So Boeing Airlines, they have to sell planes all around the world, and they have competitors that can also compete with them and sell planes we can buy from Embraer, we can buy from Airbus and that. So we should get together with them and say, look, we're going to bankrupt Boeing.
We need to remember that standing up to Trump is the foundation of all economic policies.
And of course, along the way, the inept, overpaid media person had to come on and be sure to remind the public of how stupid they really are.
Productivity seems to be sort of a sleeper issue. When you mention it to Canadians, they go,
We are masters in our own home.
Now let's get this straight. If we were masters in our own home, we wouldn't require permits for everything in our homes. The government would not be able to claim eminent domain over our homes. We would not suffer the government taking our homes for lack of payment of property tax. We wouldn't have to pay property tax. We would have the right to defend ourselves. There would be castle doctrine. We would not worry about the government coming after us in our homes for having an arbitrary too many people in our homes under a supposed emergency, and on and on and on.
And the responsibility of all politicians, particularly leaders of parties, and certainly a prime minister, is to be fully briefed on these issues. Pierre Poilievre hasn't ever bothered to get his security clearance. I've already, during this leadership campaign, filled out my forms. It wasn't that hard to do, I have to say, and put them in, and I fully expect to get it in the near future.
Let this sink in. This guy is unelected. He does not hold a seat in the House of Commons. He is a central banker. He is the front runner to be the heir to Justin's throne by taking leadership of the party through votes of party members only. He is a private citizen. Maybe I should get a security clearance then too, right? Not likely. If he wins the party election, he will be an unelected prime minister. Anything he invokes should not be valid. How should he expect to get a security clearance of the highest order? If this all goes through, then it goes to show just how corrupt the Canadian system is, and that the police and intelligence community are equally corrupt for giving him such clearance.
The two big drivers of productivity going forward will be the energy transition and AI.
I'm talking about opening a path towards a basic income.
Absolute need for our country to diversify our trade, to build with new allies. Climate change, addressing climate change, and I've spent a huge part of my career addressing it, both in terms of policy and leading the largest clean energy investor in the world, okay? But a big part of climate change is about the economic opportunity. We will not have access to the European market unless we make the progress here.
Use that as a source of economic security and also of national security, including as something that we can offer to our European and Asian allies whose support we need for our own security.
We absolutely need to shore up our allies with democracies around the world because our democracy is under threat.
That's why I would start with our Nordic partners, specifically Denmark, which is also being threatened, and our European NATO allies. I would be sure that France and Britain were there, who possess nuclear weapons, and I would be working urgently with those partners to build a closer security relationship that guarantees our security in a time when the United States can be a threat. And I would also, crucially, reach out to our Asian democratic partners, Japan, South Korea, Australia. They need to be part of the conversation too. We need to be ready for a world where the US is not the leader of the free world anymore. Canada can be and must be a leader in building this new order. Our allies are looking to us. And if we do this, we'll make ourselves safer as well.
So there is an opportunity, in fact, a necessity, an imperative here, for us to work with like-minded countries on the new security architecture. Yes, we have to step up for our contribution. How we protect our Arctic, which is under threat not just now from the Russians and the Chinese, but from potential U.S. incursions. Serious, serious issue. We need to leverage all of our assets from critical minerals to clean energy and well beyond to harden those partnerships in Europe and in Asia with like-minded.
Our 2% should not be about sending checks to the United States. Critically, we need a plan to defend our own borders, very particularly the Arctic, and we need to be working with our Nordic and EU NATO partners. They have nuclear weapons. We need to say to them, we need a plan to protect and defend our shared Arctic without the US, and Canada will step up because it's our sovereignty that's at stake as well. Work with our democratic allies to protect our borders. They want to work with us. It's time for us to step up at home, to urgently reach out to them and build a new world order where democracy and Canadian sovereignty is protected.
Unfortunately, it won't be a world order. It will be a subset of the world order because the number of like-minded countries is much smaller with the U.S. exiting.
The world needs Canada, and Canada will be there for the world.